So it is on this day, March 25th, 2023, that we're talking about AceCon, or general conventions, but this is specifically in relation to AceCon 2023, which happened 2 weeks ago and I participated in. And at the beginning, we're mostly going to be talking about my experience with AceCon, how I got looped in, what it was like, and then from there talk about the future of conventions and queer events and stuff like that. And then end it off by talking about an idea I have that's like a possible idea for this channel. I don't know how it will go over. It might flop, it might work, don't know. So the end of this video is very feedback heavy. So if you're gonna skip any part of the video, just don't skip the end. That's my very pessimistic kind of view, but the end I'll have a call for all of my viewers to watch. With all of that said, we'll dive right in and talk about AceCon itself. So, first of all, how did I get looped in? How did I end up participating in this? Well, funny story. I didn't know AceCon was a thing. Like, in the back of my mind, I figured it was, but I never actually did research, and I definitely did not think it'd be an international thing. I thought it'd be some, like, United States. I'm sure there would be an international event, but I wouldn't think the international event would be so together. I figured that I would have to go to a United States event, and I figured that any United States event for asexuality was not going to be very big. That was my point of view coming into this, okay? I don't believe some of that stuff anymore, but that was my point of view going in. Turns out, my friend was part of the crew to help with AceCon, and I met this person on the internet via Avon, so that's also a coincidence. But that person contacted me and was like, hey, I'm working on the website for AceCon 2023, would you like to help out? And for a week or so, I debated it because I knew I'd have exams the week that AceCon was. I had 3 exams the week of AceCon, so it was a stressful week for me. That's part of why this video hasn't happened yet, as well as other things in life. But I ended up deciding to participate and join, and I said that I would probably play the role of a moderator, which I'm going to be describing several roles during this video, but moderators are generally in the background. You don't see them on the screen. They don't have to have their webcam on if it's a virtual panel. They just hand questions from the chat over to the host of the panel, and the host is the one kind of running things and guiding the panel throughout. Alright, so I thought I was going to be a moderator, the background person. I thought I wasn't going to be on any panel, but I figured I'd help out from the background, and I wanted that role, not because I didn't want to be a panelist or didn't want to be a host, because on some level I did want to do those things because I feel I could be more helpful that way. However, I also felt like it wasn't my place. I felt like I was too young and inexperienced and etc. to be able to host a panel or really help out in a significant way. Moderator was the singular role I did not do during the convention, pretty much. So that's funny. I thought I was going to be a moderator, but as the time came, some people weren't available for other roles, or some people thought it would be better as a panelist and that someone else should come in and be the host. And so turned out that for my very first panel, I was the host of the panel. I was just helping guide it. And then for my second panel, I think my second one was gender. I think so. It might have been misconceptions. One of those two. Gender, I was a panelist, and then for misconceptions, I was a host, and then for North American Aces, I was a panelist. And then I kind of lurked in the background in some of the other events, and sometimes I would talk during them, but not actually as a panelist or a host. I was just kind of participating as an audience member in a way. An audience member that also happens to be an admin. It worked out. That's what matters. It worked out. So that was a lot of the experience. And I could definitely go in detail on what a lot of those events and stuff, let me rephrase that. I could go into a lot more detail about what the specific panels were about and the topics we discussed and stuff like that. But 3 of them you could go watch yourself, because AceCon, all of the live streaming panels are all on YouTube with Avon Live Streams is the name of the YouTube channel, and hiccup. And you can still go watch them. They will be up probably, I can't say forever because I don't know, but they will not be taken down. They're just up for you to watch. They might not show up on the videos tab. They may show up on the live tab, so you might have to check both tabs to find them, but I'm in there. You can watch them. However, for the misconceptions and stereotypes panel, that one is not recorded because I said panel. Misconceptions and stereotypes discussion, that one's not recorded because it was an online discussion over Discord. Discord has this feature, if you don't know, called like a stage, and pretty much you can have your admins on the stage, and then after the admins say whatever they want to say, they can invite audience members up onto the stage to talk, and then have them go back. And with a lot of the discussions, I only spectated 2, and I was the host of one of them, but pretty much a lot of those, like almost everybody talked, or everybody who was willing to talk came up and talked on the stage at some point. And so we really got a lot of insightful discussion with the audience. So as an audience member, you can come in and also have a role of speaking in front of very many aces, or ace specs, or ace allies who are participating in the convention. But yeah, you can go watch those if you would like. I have 2 of them in my recommended videos playlist. That playlist has seen some times. I keep accidentally adding things that I meant to add to watch later to my recommended videos playlist. So if you see anything that has to do with cooking or ASMR or something like that, I made a mistake. It's not supposed to be in the recommended videos. Recommended videos are mostly like queer videos or queer guidance videos that I found that were either helpful for me or I think are potentially helpful for other people. Honestly, the playlist should be a lot longer, but currently I'm only putting like high-ranking ones on there in my brain. I'll sort through it one day. That can be a feedback for the end of this video. Back on topic. What was it like to be a host of a panel? Let me tell you. First of all, I want to preface that when I came into this, I had no idea what to expect. Like, I didn't know how serious these panels were going to be because I never participated in one before. I didn't know what the software was going to be like. I didn't know how much people prepare ahead of time for these things. And so when I found out that my first panel was going to be a panel I'm hosting, I really kind of wanted to make an impression. So several days early, despite having an exam like right afterward, I joined the tech testing session to make sure that I understood how to use the basic tech. We didn't have the login information for the second application yet, so I could only do it on the first application. And for people who are interested in hosting, the application's kind of like a window. If you've ever had OBS, it's kind of like OBS, but not that complicated. But if you haven't, I'll explain it for everybody, regardless of OBS. So you have a little window screen where you can see everyone talking. When people join, they don't actually go up on the screen. You have to add them manually. So if someone joins, you have to say like add to screen or add to stream, and then everyone shows up, and then you can reorder people as you wish and show different formats and stuff like that. And then there's a sidebar with a lot of different things you can do. So the main function we use for the panel, and if you go watch you can see this, is enter little, what do you want to call them? Like blurbs, like little bubbles. and you can type words in the bubble and it'll show up at the bottom of the screen. I think they're called banners on the application, though when I think of banners, that's not what I think of. But I think they're called banners, and pretty much you can type in whatever question you want into the banner, and then in the middle of the stream, after you hit live and you're recording, you can click activate banner and it will show up. And then when you're ready to get rid of it, you can deactivate the banner, and then it will just show the panelists you have, the screen you have saved. You can load up pictures and comments from YouTube. This application we use specifically links to YouTube, so whenever someone left a comment on YouTube, it showed up on our screen on the application. And then there's a private chat so that you can talk to the other panelists without the audience seeing that conversation. So I think that's a lot of the application itself. When I started, that's going too far. So I went to that test section, got it figured out, felt I'm pretty good about everything I learned, but I had to leave because I had an exam. So left and told them that I would be back to test the second application at a later time. And then I want to say 2 days prior, but it might have been 1 day prior. I don't remember. It might have been the night before. I say night before, day before. But I went through and I was making all my questions, and the problem I was running into with all my questions was if they were too specific or they weren't worded generally. My first panel was the gender panel. I had to think about that. My first panel was a gender panel, and I didn't want to make any blanket statement that assumed that everyone had figured out their gender, or assumed that everyone figured out if they're on the A-spec and stuff like that. So it was really, I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me, is trying to figure out how to word things generally so that it could apply to the panelists without implying anything to the panelists or to the audience. So that was difficult, and not all of them were perfect. But the thing about hosting is that I could say, this was the best that I could phrase this, so if you would like to rework this question in your own way in your answer, feel free to do so. And I think having that blanket covered pretty much, don't know what that was. I think having that blanket statement covered a lot of the gaps I had. I came up with 4 or so questions, and then I asked different spaces I know. I asked my university career Discord server, what are some other questions I can ask? And I got 5 or so questions going, and then I sent those questions to the panelists the day before so that they could think about those questions and not have them be a surprise during the panel. And then went to class, did another exam. After the exam, I didn't have enough time to come home, so I was off inside the building for my department, and found, it wasn't even a conference room, I found a tutoring room. So my lighting was not great, and joined, I joined 20 minutes in advance, or 15 minutes in advance, I think. That was a little bit too far in advance, but I was really paranoid and giddy, so it happens. But panelists soon started joining after, and we were talking. And the thing about being a host is you have to realize that not everything's going to work out. Someone might not be available and whatnot. I don't think anything like that happened with the gender panel. But with other panels, things happen. So that's something you have to accept before you start your panel. But we gathered and we generally talked. My piece of advice is to establish a pattern or a signal beforehand to know when someone's going to speak next. Various ways you can do that. You can have people use the private chat and say, I want to talk, or something like that. Or you can have the host choose who talks next, or you can have people raise their hands. Those kinds of things. Some of those aren't as accommodating to everybody as other ones, so it depends who you have on the panel. So for example, the raising hands thing, if you have someone that can't have their camera on for various reasons, then they can't do that. So establishing that communication beforehand so that everyone knows that is highly advised. Because I think there were times that we did that, but we didn't tell all the panelists, just most of them, and then it wasn't clear the pattern or flow of things. So establishing that beforehand is good advice. But that covers most of what the role as a host is. You hit live once you're all ready, or your moderator does. Moderator handles a lot of the tech things, but you can also handle the tech things. Both of you have the ability to like add banners and stuff. So sometimes if you're gonna like add a banner, the moderator might like add a comment from the YouTube channel chat. So sometimes you can accidentally click things at the same time and then someone has to undo their thing so that the other one shows up. But generally chill. You hit live, you get streaming, and you have to introduce the panel. This is probably my biggest regret. I didn't know that we were supposed to talk about the lands we were on, land claims. I didn't know that we were supposed to do that, and so I didn't do that for the panel I hosted. And then every subsequent panel, I realized that everyone was doing that, and I was like, shh. So, my bad. I dropped the ball there because I wasn't aware I had to do that. So, find your mentor. If you're going to host, find someone who's been a part of this before and can tell you what specifically they're doing, they're talking about at the beginning of the event that isn't related to your topic. So I had all my things gathered for the gender diversity introduction, but I didn't have the things gathered for the formal panel introduction for AceCon 2023. So figuring that out, highly advised. Everything still went fine without it. I just feel bad reflecting back. People make mistakes, it happens, but also it's a mistake that also could have not happened. I need to take a sip, hold on. My throat's been really dry today, so I'm gonna be drinking throughout the video, and I'm gonna be cutting my words off sometimes because I just can't say the word. Bear with me. So, with all that said, I do highly advise hosting. I think it was a lot of fun, and I was really stressed beforehand that it was my first time. I hadn't really practiced. We didn't have like a test run with the panelists. We just hit live and went. And we might have hit like a bump or two throughout the panel, but I think overall it came together really well, and I'm very happy. And we had a positive reaction from folks as well. So, yay. That's what it's like to host. Now, what is it like to be a panelist? This one, all of the subsequent ones are going to be much shorter because I think the host is the most complicated role. As a panelist, I still knew how things worked because I had host access and I could watch the things the host and moderator were doing, but I mostly made sure that I was lending an ear and paying attention while I was talking to the host and moderator, and generally just thinking about my words and trying to keep track of how much I was talking. I wanted to make sure that I talked the same amount as other panelists, and that's a really hard thing to do. Some people are very short on words, and some people are like me and ramble forever. So trying to measure myself when I'm speaking and make sure I didn't overtalk was definitely something, and trying to make sure to phrase it as my experience was a very big thing. But I think aside from those details, you mostly sit there and just have a lending ear. If you need someone to show the question again, ask them to show the question, and then just say your answer. And if you think you can't answer it, or you think that you don't have enough depth in your answer, then you can skip that, because surely enough, there are plenty of questions coming in from the YouTube chat and from the second application, which I forgot to explain what the second application is. The second application is just a website where anyone in the audience or view member can just go into the website and type a question, and then we see the question. That's it. So there's usually more than enough questions. I think we didn't have many questions when it came to the North American ACES panel, but it's also the North American ACES panel, so I'm not very surprised. But generally, there's more than enough questions, so if you think you don't have enough of an answer, just let it go, because you're going to have plenty more questions to be able to talk about. Yay. Okay, that's what it's like as a panelist. And then as an audience member. Now, I didn't actually watch any of the live streams live, but I was an audience member for the discussions with the stages, as I discussed earlier, and it was very chill, I think. I accidentally added myself because I didn't know how to use the stage, and I felt stupid. So I learned not to do that. My bad. But from then on, I got to see like the active discussion and the communication throughout the discussions, and it's really enjoyable. You can see many different perspectives being addressed at once and people acknowledging each perspective. And you can also see everyone like focusing in on one thing. I think during our misconceptions panel, we mentioned, like as a joke, to break up the really serious section, because we got progressively more serious as we went on. As a joke to break up the serious section, we joked about the stereotype that all aces like cake, and everyone swarmed in. Like it was hilarious. It was funny. So key moment there. But I think as an audience member, there's no pressure to participate. You can just listen to people. You can have it on in the background. You don't necessarily have to be very active in participating. And I think generally there's a lot of perspectives, and you can submit questions anonymously on the second application I talked about earlier, or submit questions in the YouTube chat, or make comments in the YouTube chat and have them highlighted on the stream, etc., etc. So I think at the very least, participating as an audience member is pretty open to most people. I'm not going to say everyone. We made sure that we had closed captioning when it came to YouTube and the live stream, but when it comes to Discord and stuff like that, we were not able to have closed captioning. So there's some room for improvement or room for more inclusiveness that we could have, but I think overall we did pretty good. That's my claim. We have some issues, which I'll talk about in the next section. But before we do that, I also want to emphasize that this is all my online experience. This is me participating on AceCon via the internet. I was not in person in Australia because I am frankly not able to afford that. So if you want to talk to someone about what it was like to be in person in Australia, you can join the AceCon 23 Discord. Just because AceCon is over in terms of the events and panels doesn't mean that the discussion is over, and there are people still actively-ish talking on that server. It's not very actively active, but there's still people on it, and if you send a message, people would respond to that message. That's what I meant by active. It's not like people are chatting on it every day, because they're not. But we could be. So I'm just saying it is a resource out there for people, and you can ask someone what it was like to go in person. Okay. Sip. Oh! Actually, I had one more comment for this section before I sip. My last comment was that people came from all kinds of backgrounds. My concern with being a host was that I was too young to be a host and not experienced enough and whatever. But I was not the only one, and there were people from all kinds of groups that were there to support me as well as someone who is new to stuff. So we had older aces, we had younger aces, not as an event, but like there, and coming from various locations, coming from various backgrounds, people with religion, people without religion, etc., etc. And that way we were able to cover a lot more perspectives. Again, in the second section, I'll talk about some of the perspectives we didn't cover, but in terms of like helping me out and having the panels be rather chill, I think that is a contributing factor. I'm gonna run out of tea. That's not gonna be good. But yeah, and then last thing I'll say, because I didn't explain this at the beginning, I probably should have. AceCon was a very, very broad, I guess this kind of segues in the next section. AceCon had a very broad list of topics. I'm trying to load it up so that I can read it all off. Ignore my face getting darker, it does that. No, not the Slido. AceCon on the Google site. So here's the problem. We'll talk about this in the next section, but one of the problems is when you search AceCon, AnimeCon comes up. That's kind of frustrating. I just want the AceCon website. Why? Website. Nope, that's the wrong one too. Okay, well, to keep talking while I try to load this up, we had a very broad list of topics initially. Not all of those topics were discussed, but I do want to mention that we had BIPOC ACEs, we had ERA ACEs, we had gender diversity and asexuality, we had neurodivergent ACEs, we have ACE experiences in the queer community at large, racism in the ACE community, disability, ACE community building, ACE survivors of trauma, asexuality and religion, asexual parenting. I did not think about ACE parenting as a topic before, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my god, yes, I will be watching this later, so that exists. And then there's a second discussion on disability. I wasn't in the chats for this, so I don't know what the difference is between the two discussions, but there are two discussions about that. And then there's the Europe panel, there's an Africa panel, and then we had ACE experiences in healthcare, talking about the split attraction model. We had ACE organizers, so the people who put these kinds of events together. If you are interested in doing that, then you can go watch that panel. We had ACE research, ACE representation in media, older ACEs. There's some discussions about what is considered older ACEs at this point now, which can be helpful. Healthy relationships, I might have already said that one, maybe not. Did I say Demi and Gray ACE? Demi and Gray ACE. We also ended up including agosexual into that, even though we didn't include it in the title. So that's kind of our fault. And then misconceptions and stereotypes, which I was a part of. And then asexuality in the workplace, safety for ACEs, Indigenous and First Nations ACEs, and then asexual men. And then there's a Southeast Asia panel and a North America panel. Segueing into the next section, there's two specific examples I will share, but there are more examples, but the two specific ones I want to talk about. The first one is the North America panel. The North America panel ended up being a United States panel. All the people from not United States in North America all weren't available in the end. And then towards the end of the panel, I kind of included one comment about the fact that that happened, but we couldn't comment on the rest of North America. And so because that ended up happening, it kind of became like a kind of biased panel regarding the region, or less regional. So that is my first example, and then my second example is about the sex positivity ACE panel. Notice I did not list that in the panels because it didn't happen. It was a topic that people kind of wanted to do, but no one was confident enough to take a handle on. And I wanted to do it, I wanted to support it, but I wasn't going to like talk by myself in front of a group of people about sex positivity, because I don't think I'm the best person for that. And so we came up with some ideas on how to get it to work, but a lot of them fell through, and that panel ended up falling through. And it wasn't the only panel where that happened. There were other ideas that we had, and we wanted to talk about them, but people either weren't available at the time that it would be recorded, or weren't didn't have enough perspective or stuff to say to fill it, or etc., etc. And so those discussions never happened. But I think a lot of those topics are important, and I think they should be talked about. I think they should be given voice to. And so I want to mention what we, the queer community, need when it comes to these kinds of events, similar to AceCon. Not only AceCon, but other queer conventions or just queer gatherings, events, etc., pile all the words on. What do we need to improve on these in the future and keep having these? The first thing I want to say is advertising. Now, there's two levels to advertising I want to discuss. There's advertising to the audience, the people who will come to participate, and there's advertising way beforehand to get a crew, to get people to help work on these things and be able to support these groups so that those panels don't fall through when it turns out that people in the audience, if they knew about it, could have helped. So this one I think is very much key. I didn't know AceCon existed because I never heard of that advertising, but if it was at a different time of year, then 100% I would have been there and helping them. But because of the timing with all my exams that week and stuff, I feel I didn't help as much as I could have. So advertise that there are these things that you can help with. There are these huge events. There are conventions everywhere. And I know sometimes it's hard to comprehend, like, oh, I can go to a trans convention. Because I probably could, but I've never actually taken the time to Google it and do research and see where it is and stuff like that. I don't even know stuff in my, like, immediate area. Like, I'm sure there's all kinds of events right here in the city next door, but I don't often look. So having a way to advertise these is very good. The problem, one of the issues I have with finding queer events specifically is that a lot of them are on Facebook and I don't have Facebook. So yeah, that's a thing. Regardless, we need more crew members, we need more people, we need people who are willing to volunteer, which is my second point. If people advertise or they don't advertise, we still need volunteers that will see the call and come to the call, or volunteers that will offer their help even if a call hasn't been put out or hasn't been advertised well. And so with some websites, I'm just going to keep on the ACE train as an example. Asexuality Visibility Day, no, that's not what it's called. International Asexual Day, that's what it's called. Has a website, and you can go on the website and there's a contact list, and you can contact them with the events you know of or volunteer and say like, hey, I'm offering to help with this, whatever you need help with. And pretty much anyone that is organizing these things won't say no. They're not going to say, oh, we don't need help. Like, pretty much all these groups constantly need help. And so if you find that you are willing or able to volunteer, and that doesn't have to mean that you'll be speaking in front of people, you don't have to be extroverted, you don't have to, I mean, you technically wouldn't even have to speak whatever language the other members speak, as long as you do whatever task you think is helpful to the group. So you can always volunteer if you so choose. No pressure, but also we need them, so volunteer. But that's just an example. Other sites, other groups, other things, always accepting that. In the last section, which you better watch because I know this is a long video, but last section is very important. I'll be sharing some more resources to meet some of these organizers and people, if you so choose, so that you can get more into these things. Yay. All right. I kind of already covered the third point by accident, but research what events exist and are around you. I'm terrible at that. As I said, I pretty much don't do it, but I'm hoping in the future that I'll start doing it more and figure out what exists around me other than just the Pride event or university things. I feel I need to expand a little bit more, and if there is an ACE group in the area, I feel I should be supporting that group. And if there isn't an ACE group in the area, could maybe make one. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But stuff like that. And then the last point for this section is to network. Because that's what I ended up doing for a lot of AceCon. Turns out that a lot of people will really listen to what you say and your perspective and keep you as a resource on hand if they need like help with something or opinions or just to be able to meet you or get in contact with you in the future. So when it comes to things like AceCon, if you are willing to, there's no requirement. If you can network with various ACEs you meet, you may be able to have some very helpful conversations. You may be able to have access to servers and things you didn't know existed, which happened to me. I ended up leaving that server, so we're not going to talk about that, but it's still true that you can have access to different resources you didn't know exist through different people. And as happened to me, you can have your friend accidentally invite you into a convention and then have a role in that convention. So networking kind of opens doors and opportunities for you that you can't really even hypothetically map out before doing the networking. So I think we need a lot of networking in our group. Related, ACE Standard Advice and some other famous YouTube ACE groups and channels were also participating in this convention. And so networking with different YouTube channels, not everyone watches the YouTubers that you watch, so bringing up the YouTuber you watch so that we can invite them to these events beforehand, unlike what I did where I invited them way too late. Yay. So tell people about the network you know as well. All right, we're on to the final section. 40 minutes. I'm so sorry. I think we might be shorter than the Pride video. Every Pride video is going to be long because I can go on forever about Pride. Gulp. Oh, my throat. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost there. Lastly, I intend, by the time this video is out, to create a Google document with the list of resources and websites and stuff that I have been talking about. There will be a link to the AceCon 2023 Discord server, which again, it's still open. It's still open to people. You can come in and chat about it. You can scroll through the conversations we had, even if you can't see the people talking themselves, etc., etc., etc. You can do all that. You can look at some of the websites and resources, but all the things I'm going to have on there are just going to be things that ACE groups gave me, or that people gave me throughout AceCon. There won't be things outside of AceCon, or the list won't be long, is kind of what I'm trying to say. So the idea that I want to have is that you guys can append a comment with any additional resources that you can think of, and then I can copy your comment and paste in the document. I don't want people to be able to edit the document just in case they erase someone else's thing. So the hope is that people can leave a comment in the document and then I can move it over. And then have a more complete list of all the resources that people can have in one spot on my channel. I know this is not a very viewed channel. I don't really intend it to be a very viewed channel, but I think it's still worth putting the time in to have that resource and then start handing that resource out in the future. So I intend to do that. And I'll include some additional ACE sites and stuff like that inside of that list. Tell me about events that I don't know, because then I can also advertise those as well. I want to be able to advertise these things more in the future, even if I'm not available to participate in them. So if you know of some local ACE event, then you can tell me, and I can say something about, hey, this is happening on the various spaces I'm on. Okay. And that segues into the final thing, which doesn't have to do with conventions at all, just about the YouTube channel itself. Feedback. I generally love feedback. I very much request feedback from people. Obviously, you don't have to leave feedback, but sorry, this is bothering me. I can't keep looking at it. Okay, there we go. Not required to leave feedback, but I do encourage it because it allows me to do better in the future and have these more organized scripted videos, which I've noticed I'm starting to fall apart on, and stuff like that. But direct feedback wise, I'm considering having shorts, not like as a big deal, initially just as like an update on where I'm at in my life and what's going on with the next video and stuff like that, or to advertise the video I just did, maybe give a summary of a video. I'm considering doing that, but I kind of want to make sure that people have interest in that before I like really invest in it. I don't want to make a bunch of pointless videos and then have them not matter. So if you're interested in shorts, tell me. I'll probably make a short when I release this video so that I can advertise this portion of the video so people can leave feedback on either that short or here. And then what more do you want? What topics do you want me to cover? I'm not necessarily running out of topics because there are infinite topics when it comes to the queer community, but I think there are topics, or I think I'm running out of topics that I can speak confidently on and be positive on. That's one of my goals with the channel, was to kind of mostly address positive things, because there are plenty of channels out there that cover a lot of the sad things and the negative things and kind of get me down in a hole personally. So even when I talked about dysphoria, I didn't necessarily focus on these are all the bad things dysphoria does for me. I'm more so focused on these are some of the things that it does, so you know you can so you can know that there's a variety, but also these are the things that I do and others do to make it better, and kind of giving it a positive light. So I'm running out of a lot of those things without covering a lot of things that I've already mentioned. I can definitely separate some of the specific things I've talked about, and I can definitely start to get into different discussions, but I'm also trying to avoid discussions where it generally turns into an argument. By PolyOmniPan was one of those videos where I was a little torn because I know everyone argues about it constantly, but I figured that since I use those words a lot on this channel, or in my everyday life, maybe not on this channel, I figured that I would define them so people can understand my perspective towards that. And there are different perspectives are valid in the queer community specifically. I had a video about that too. But I'm starting to run out of topics that don't run into that kind of wall. So if you have something you specifically would like to see, please tell me, because then I can put together some thoughts. I kind of wonder about bringing in someone that I met during AceCon. Maybe. I might bring a friend on. Don't know. The format of that would probably be a screen recording or a YouTube live. Don't know about that either. So there's a lot of new things I'm going to be exploring in the future regarding this channel. With all that said, I have my last announcement, which is that I have a lot going on in my life right now. I don't want to get into it because it gets into negative things. I'm trying to not be negative in this space, but I do have a lot going on, and so the frequency of posts is going to get even more distant as time goes on. I know I've been kind of bad about posting consistently recently, especially since I got a concussion. I'm still recovering from the concussion on some level, not like mentally, but like still trying to get back in the flow of life. I'm still figuring that out, And while I'm figuring that out, there's a lot of other things going on. I'm about to move in a month to live on my own. And there's just a lot going on. So be aware that the post will be more intermittent, but if you leave a comment, I pretty much am on YouTube every day, check my notifications and whatnot. So if you leave a comment, I will get to it, even if I'm not actively posting on the YouTube channel. Alright, I think that covers everything for this video. I apologize for a 45-minute video. Feel free to leave feedback on your ideal video length. I can try to start chopping it down as well. I might do like 1-sentence definitions in shorts as well. ASTAT Advice does that, and I actually kind of really like them. But I don't want to step on, you know, TikTokers' toes, because that's kind of what they do. I don't know. Anyway, I'm probably going to go live stream, so if you know my live stream, and I'm still live streaming by the time this uploads, join my live stream. With all that said, have a good one. Bye-bye.